folks, Dr. Robert Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. Now this video is going to be about two herbs, and those herbs are ginseng and rhodiola. I have covered ginseng and rhodiola in other videos, but I wanted to do something a little bit different with this video in terms of discussing the short-term effects of these two herbs. Normally, rhodiola and ginseng are taken for the long-term benefits. They're herbs that provide vitality. They are adaptogenic herbs, so they can decrease stress levels. Now, stress is a perceived event. Stress affects different people in different ways. One stressor that might affect one person might not affect another, but generally humans and animals are affected by the same sorts of stress, and that can include exercise, can be a form of stress. The rigors of daily life, all the problems you have with daily life can cause stress, relationship problems, family problems, monetary problems. All of these create negative effects on us, and we perceive those negative effects, and our bodies respond by releasing stress hormones. Those stress hormones can have a significantly detrimental effect on us, particularly in the long term, and adaptogenic herbs such as ginseng and rhodiola have been shown to be able to balance the stress hormone levels such that they don't become problematic in the long term. And that's why they're beneficial for the immune system, because stress is very damaging to the immune system, and that's why they're very beneficial for mental health, because stress is also damaging to the brain. So these types of herbs there's a large amount of evidence that shows that they are adaptogenic and they're beneficial in the long term, and they have a long use of traditional medicine use as well, particularly in places like China and India. But this video is really more about the short-term effects. Can you take rhodiola and ginseng and get immediate effects from them? Looking at the literature, it appears that you can, and in particular there is one type of effect that is particularly beneficial from taking them in the short term, and that is cognitive improvements. Both ginseng and rhodiola have been shown to improve cognition in the short term. Now, there have been quite a few studies done on rhodiola and ginseng, and I would suggest that this probably is extrapolatable to other adaptogenic herbs such as gotu kola and any of the herbs that show adaptogenic properties. Ashwagandha, for example, may also have these properties, but they are particularly well researched in rhodiola, and they have been researched in ginseng as well. Now, these studies generally administer a single dose or a very short-term dose of the adaptogenic herb to a group of healthy people, and then they expose these people to a number of mental agility tests. Quite often these studies use students because they are going through exam processes anyway, and therefore they can be tested. And what these studies tend to find is that there is a small but significant benefit from taking these herbs in a single dose on mental ability. Not all mental faculties are improved, and the studies are dissimilar in this effect in terms of the fact that some studies will find that one type of perhaps one type of memory enhancement will be improved, whereas another study will find that visual acuity and the ability to spot problems with puzzles, for example, might be improved. But generally there are improvements in cognitive function when taking rhodiola and ginseng. This shows that they probably have very rapid effects. The reason that they have these mental effects not fully understood, but clearly these adaptogenic herbs, clearly ginseng and rhodiola, affect the brain in a positive way. They may increase, for example, levels of certain neurotransmitters that may be required for memory formation or memory retrieval, or the ability to problem solve. Neurotransmitters are incredibly complex. I won't pretend to understand them. I don't think anybody else does understand them. There is a basic understanding in science of how they work, but there are so many complexities, and they are so interactive with each other. It's very difficult to actually say that, for example, increasing serotonin levels will improve your memory, or increasing noradrenaline levels will improve your memory. There is some indication that that might happen, but there is also a problem that if you increase neurotransmitters too much, they may have a detrimental effect. But generally these these adaptogenic herbs seem to have a more of a balancing effect. So they tend to, from my experience, they tend to balance the levels of all neurotransmitters. So they return you more to what you should have as a normal, as a normal level. So how they're working in the short term is not exactly clear. Whether they can have their adaptogenic effects and this balancing effects in the short term, or maybe they're providing some kind of energy enhancement to the brain in the short term. There could be, for example, an increased supply of glucose. They do have effects on blood glucose levels. Certainly some of the adaptogenic hormones will lower blood glucose levels, which suggests that that glucose is going somewhere else. That glucose could, for example, being transported into the brain. That could increase, in turn, the energy utilization of the brain, which has a cognitive effect. So there's multiple different ways that they could be working. It's not exactly clear how they do work, but clearly there is evidence that shows that rhodiola and ginseng both have these short-term effects. So if you are if you are exposed to these types of tests, if you're a student, or maybe you have CPD testing at work where you have to undertake mental tests, will ginseng and rhodiola help you? It appears that they will. They will help in a single dose, so you don't have to take them long term. If you wanted to just improve your cognitive ability in the short term for that test, you could take either of these herbs and they would be beneficial. And I would suggest that the other adaptogenic herbs would also have these effects, although they've not been tested to the same level. There is good overall evidence that adaptogenic herbs in general will improve certain cognitive functions, but particularly rhodiola has been looked at in the short term, and there have been studies that have looked at ginseng. What sort of rhodiola would you need to take? Usually you would need to take something that is standardized. There are particular chemicals within rhodiola that certain researchers believe may have these effects. Salidrosides are one, and there are rosivins as well, which are also in rhodiola. And standardized extracts usually come standardized for those two phytochemicals. Ginseng is more complex. There are possibly more active components in ginseng, and they're generally called ginsenosides. Certainly one of the studies that I've looked at in terms of improving short-term cognitive effects used a ginseng extract called G115, which is a patented and standardized form of ginseng, and that form of ginseng has been standardized for particular ginsenosides, which researchers believe may have more active effects than others. So generally the ginseng extract would need to be standardized for a certain amount of ginsenosides. Which ginsenosides are beneficial is controversial. Some studies have shown that some ginsenosides are more beneficial than others, but certainly the G115 extract has been shown in many studies to be to contain the right amount of certainly enough of these adaptogenic compounds to have adaptogenic effects, and certainly G115 extract has shown short-term beneficial cognitive effects. So that's the one I would use or recommend if that was the effect that you were trying to replicate. So this is just really a kind of a brief video to highlight this quite amazing fact. Really, nutritionists usually regard nutrition as a long-term process. There are very few substances that you can take nutritionally that will have instant effects. Most substances are required to be taken over the long term to affect your health. That's how nutrition works. Generally, herbs tend to work in the kind of the short. Some work in the short term, but they generally work in the medium term. You have to take them for a certain amount of time. But it's just interesting that these two adaptogenic herbs seem to work from a single dose taken in healthy people, and it improves their cognition. So it's worth considering if you do have to improve your mental faculties for any reason, and obviously they you could extrapolate this and say, well, this may have significant effects. For example, if you're getting on in years, you find that your brain's not working maybe as well as it used to. Certainly worth considering rhodiola and ginseng, because they have been shown to particularly useful as general vitality tonics for the body and the mind. So I hope you found that interesting. As always, eat well, stay healthy, and protect yourself, and I will see you soon for another video. Take care.